Growing up in the suburbs, life felt predictable, almost predetermined. I was Sam, short for Samantha, the girl who was always seen as ordinary in a town where everyone's dreams seemed to fit neatly into the familiar molds of reality. The houses in my neighborhood were like carbon copies of each other. Modest, well-kept, and practical, much like the people who lived in them. My parents were no exception. They were the kind of folks who believed in working hard, saving for the future, and not taking unnecessary risks. My mom worked as a schoolteacher, and my dad managed a small hardware store downtown. They were good people, loving parents, but when it came to dreams like mine, they were, at best, skeptical. From as early as I can remember, I was drawn to the world of movies. Not just as a spectator, but as someone who longed to be a part of that magical world where stories came to life, where emotions were larger than life, and where anything seemed possible. I'd spend hours watching old classics and new releases alike, losing myself in the characters and the worlds they inhabited. The idea of becoming an actress wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a burning desire, an ache in my heart that wouldn't go away no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. But in our small, close-knit community, dreams like becoming an actress were often viewed as impractical, even foolish. Whenever I mentioned my dream to others, I was met with the same polite smile and gentle discouragement. It's a tough industry, Sam, they'd say. And maybe you should think about something more realistic. How about teaching, like your mom? You're great with kids. I'd nod and smile, but deep down, I knew that teaching wasn't my path. I wanted more. I wanted to step into the shoes of different characters, to feel the rush of performing on stage or in front of a camera, to move people with my performances the way so many actors had moved me. But the harsh reality was that I had no idea how to get there. I had no connections, no experience, and no clue where to even begin. The world of Hollywood felt like a distant, unattainable fantasy, a world that existed only on the other side of the screen. I'd look out of my bedroom window at the quiet, tree-lined streets of our neighborhood and feel a deep sense of frustration. How was a girl like me, living in a place like this, supposed to make it in a world that felt so far out of reach? My parents, bless their hearts, tried to be supportive, but they didn't really understand my passion. They encouraged me to focus on my studies, to think about college, to find a career that would offer stability and security. You're so smart, Sam, and my mom would say. You could be anything you want. Why not something more practical? My dad, more reserved, would simply offer a nod of agreement. I knew they meant well, but every time they steered me toward a different path, I felt like a piece of my dream was slipping away. High school was a blur of homework, tests, and extracurricular activities that never quite captured my interest. I tried to get involved in the drama club, but the roles were small, the production simple, and the opportunities limited. It was a far cry from the grand productions I dreamed of, but it was something, and I clung to it like a lifeline. The other kids in the club were nice enough, but none of them seemed to share my deep passion for acting. For them, it was just another after-school activity, a way to fill time or pad their college applications. For me, it was everything. I remember the night I first stumbled upon the concept of manifestation. It was late, and I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone in that aimless way I often did when I couldn't sleep. I was feeling particularly low that night, weighed down by the seemingly insurmountable distance between me and my dream. My thoughts were spiraling, filled with doubt and fear. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was being foolish. Maybe I should just give up and focus on something more realistic. But then, as I mindlessly scrolled, a video popped up in my feed. It was one of those self-help gurus talking about the power of the mind, about how our thoughts create our reality, about something called manifestation. Normally, I would have scrolled right past it, but something made me pause and watch. The speaker was charismatic, confident, and the things he was saying seemed almost too good to be true. But as I listened, I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, there was something to this. Manifestation, as he explained it, was the idea that we have the power to create our reality through our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. It wasn't just about wishful thinking, it was about focusing on what you wanted, believing that it was possible, and taking steps toward it. The more I listened, the more intrigued I became. Could it really be that simple? Could I really change my life, achieve my dreams, just by changing the way I thought? The idea seemed almost magical, but I was desperate for something to hold on to, something that could give me the direction I so desperately needed. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with possibilities, with the idea that maybe I had more control over my life than I realized. The next day, I started researching more about manifestation. I read books, watched videos, and devoured anything I could find on the subject. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that this was something I needed to try. I started small, focusing on little things in my life that I wanted to change. I practiced visualizing what I wanted, feeling as if it had already happened, and letting go of the doubt and fear that had always held me back. At first, it felt strange, almost silly, but I kept at it. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. It was my secret, something I needed to figure out on my own. Over time, I started to notice small changes. Nothing major, but little things that made me wonder if maybe there was something to this after all. I'd think about getting a good grade on a test, and then I'd find myself more focused, more confident, and sure enough, I'd ace it. I'd visualize a positive outcome for something at school, and it would happen. It was like a game at first, testing the waters, seeing if I could really influence my reality through my thoughts. But the real test came when I decided to apply these principles to my acting dream. I started by visualizing myself as an actress, not just in vague, general terms, but in specific, detailed scenarios. I'd imagine myself on a movie set, surrounded by lights and cameras, delivering my lines with confidence and poise. I'd picture myself at auditions, walking in with my head held high, knowing that I had something special to offer. I'd see myself signing a contract, landing my first role, and feeling the thrill of stepping into a character's shoes. I did this every day, usually in the quiet moments before bed, when the house was still and my mind was calm. At first, it felt like just another daydream, a way to escape from the reality of my small-town life. But the more I practiced, the more real it started to feel. I could almost taste the excitement, the nervous energy, the sense of fulfillment that came with pursuing my passion. But manifestation isn't just about thinking, it's also about doing. I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to happen. I had to take action. So, I started looking for opportunities, no matter how small, to get involved in acting. I auditioned for local theater productions, took acting classes whenever I could afford them, and spent hours watching and studying movies, analyzing the performances of the actors I admired. I immersed myself in the craft, determined to learn everything I could. The opportunities were few and far between, and there were many times when I felt discouraged. The local theater scene was limited, and most of the roles I landed were small, insignificant parts in community productions. But I tried to keep my spirits up, reminding myself that every step, no matter how small, was a step closer to my dream. I kept visualizing, kept believing, and kept pushing forward, even when it felt like I was getting nowhere. Then, one day, something happened that changed everything. I was at home, going through my usual routine, when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, and for a moment, I hesitated to answer. But something told me to pick up, so I did. Hello, is this Samantha? A woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Sam, I replied, my heart starting to race. My name is Lisa, and I'm a casting director for a new film that's in pre-production. We're looking for fresh talent, and your name came up in a recommendation. I was wondering if you'd be interested in auditioning for a role. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A casting director? A film? It felt like a dream, like something I had imagined so many times that it was hard to believe it was actually happening. I stammered out a yes, trying to keep my voice steady as we arranged a time for the audition. After I hung up the phone, I just stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. This was it. This was the opportunity one had been manifesting, the chance to prove myself, to take that first step toward my dream. I could feel the excitement bubbling up inside me, but I also knew that I had to stay focused. This was just the beginning, and there was still a long way to go. The days leading up to the audition were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a mix of excitement, fear, and disbelief. I spent hours preparing, going over the lines they had sent me, practicing in front of the mirror, and visualizing the audition going perfectly. But no matter how much I prepared, the nerves never quite went away. This was my chance, and I didn't want to blow it. The audition itself was a nerve-wracking experience. I arrived at the casting office, a small, unassuming building in the city, and sat in the waiting room with a dozen other hopefuls. I could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken competition between us. But I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was what I had been working toward. I had visualized this moment so many times, and now that it was here, I knew I had to give it everything I had. When my name was called, I took a deep breath and walked into the audition room. The casting director, Lisa, was there, along with a few other people who were involved in the production. They greeted me warmly, but I could sense their critical eyes, their scrutiny as I stood before them. The scene they asked me to perform was emotional, a moment of vulnerability for the character. I had prepared for this, rehearsing the lines over and over in my head, but as I began to speak, I could feel the nerves creeping in. My voice trembled slightly, and I had to fight to keep my composure. But then, something shifted. As I continued the scene, I felt a sense of calm wash over me, as if I was no longer in that small audition room but fully immersed in the character's world. The words flowed more naturally, and I found myself losing track of time, completely absorbed in the performance. When I finished, there was a brief silence. I glanced at the casting director, trying to read her expression. She nodded slightly, a small smile on her lips, but it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Thank you, Sam, as she said, her voice warm but non-committal. We'll be in touch. I left the audition room feeling a mix of emotions. Relief that it was over, pride in how I had performed, but also uncertainty. I had done my best, but now it was out of my hands. All I could do was wait and hope that my manifestation efforts would continue to guide me. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Every time the phone rang, my heart would leap, hoping it was the call I had been waiting for. I tried to stay busy, to keep my mind off the audition, but it was impossible not to think about it. I replayed the scene over and over in my head, analyzing every detail, wondering if I could have done something differently. Then, finally, the call came. I was at home, sitting in the kitchen with my mom, when the phone rang. I recognized the number immediately, and my heart started to pound in my chest. I excused myself and ran to my room to answer. Hello, is this Sam? Lisa's voice was on the other end of the line. Yes, this is Sam, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm calling with some good news, she said, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. We'd like to offer you the role. You were fantastic in the audition, and we think you'll be a perfect fit for the character. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had gotten the part. The dream I had been manifesting for so long was finally becoming a reality. I thanked her profusely, trying to keep my emotions in check as we discussed the details. When I hung up the phone, I just stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. This was it. This was the beginning of everything I had ever wanted. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I met with the director, the other cast members, and the crew. We went over the script, discussed the character, and started rehearsing. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. Being on set, surrounded by the energy and excitement of the production, felt like stepping into another world. It was hard work, but it didn't feel like work at all. It felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I continued to use the principles of manifestation to guide me. I visualized every scene, every moment on set, and every opportunity that came my way. And with each step forward, I felt my confidence growing, my belief in myself solidifying. The more I believed in my dream, the more it seemed to believe in me. The film wrapped, and the post-production process began. It was strange not being on set every day, but I knew that this was just the beginning. I had proven to myself that I could do this, that I could manifest my dreams into reality, and I was ready for whatever came next. When the film was finally released, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I watched it with my family, who had been supportive but still somewhat cautious about my new career. As the credits rolled and my name appeared on the screen, I felt a surge of pride and emotion. This was real. I had done it. I had manifested my dream, and it was only the beginning. The film received positive reviews, and I started getting more calls for auditions, more opportunities to build my career. But no matter how far I went, I never forgot the lessons I had learned along the way. Manifestation wasn't just a tool for achieving my dreams. It was a way of life, a way of thinking and believing that had the power to change everything. And as I looked back on the journey, I realized that the most important thing I had manifested wasn't just a career in acting. It was a belief in myself, a confidence that no matter what challenges came my way, I had the power to overcome them, to shape my own reality, and to create the life I had always dreamed of. That was the true magic of manifestation, and it was a gift I would carry with me for the rest of my life.